lunchtime video, and we're actually doing it at lunchtime. It's about 1 o'clock, isn't it?
It is.
Keep losing track of time.
A dull Liverpool today, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Very grey skies. It's desperate to absolutely pour down. That's the weather forecast. That's not quite cracked it yet. It's waiting until I decide to run out the office at R2 and row. That's its plan. But you know, that's just me having a complex about the weather. I'm sure it won't do that to me really. And it's a sad day though for Liverpool. The weather is in fact onomatopoeic, because this is the time that no, it's not onomatopoeic, it's pathetic fallacy. Either way, I'm remembering my GCSE English, which isn't good, but it's onomatopoeic when it sounds like pathetic fallacy is when it mirrors your mood, because Kolo Toure is leaving Liverpool. 3 years of Kolo. It's almost certainly the right time for him to go, but that doesn't mean you can't be a bit sad about it.
No, I mean it's nice to have nice fellas playing for the footy club, I think. I mean, as simple as that for me. And Kolo was undoubtedly that, and also as well, I mean, you know, he made mistakes, he made blunders, there were great moments as well, of course. I think he sort of redeemed some of those mistakes by the way he played, certainly towards the end of his time with us. And yeah, I just think he's a great fella, and that's a nice thing. I mean, you know, I think having someone like him around would have lifted the room, would have lifted the changing rooms, would have lifted the things at Melwood, and that can't be underestimated. I mean, I always think, when we're talking like this, think about in your own workplace, and you know, if you're all sat there and it's a bit down, have you got a fella who can put life into everyone and get everyone going? And if so, well, that's what Kolo was doing, I think.
And also a fellow who, for instance, has achieved things, has got that background in whatever industry it is, who's able to go, listen, whatever it is you've been through, I've been through it as well. Whatever it is that's gone on, we've gone through, and I've got through it, and we're all still happy, and we're all still having a nice time. And that's the big thing. He came in having won the league with Manchester City, won more than one league with Arsenal, and gone a season unbeaten, which everyone forgets. So, you know, he's no clown. He went a season unbeaten at centre half, and whilst Thierry Henry obviously makes that side, you don't go a season unbeaten playing 35 games at the centre of defence if you're not a very, very good footballer. And you could see that towards the back end. I mean, I think I'm glad he's gone in a sense, because I think if he'd stayed one more year, I think there was a lot of him playing at the absolute ragged edge. And it's not dissimilar, and I think it is a little bit different, because I think with Gerrard in 13-14, I think the fact that we didn't win the league in 13-14 was one of the things that meant in 14-15 his performance has dropped off. But I think in general though, Gerrard, if you think about that run that Gerrard goes on after Christmas in 13-14, it is this idea that not that he's obviously going for this thing, but also it's his last throw of the dice. It is like, you know, he's playing every game like it's his last, and then you come back in August and there's the same fella looking at you going, and we start all over again, and that's difficult. And I think it's, you know, so I think that Kolo with all of his positivity would have found it difficult, I think, to go at that pitch again.
He's still looking to play though, apparently.
Well, I'm not surprised. I think he could go somewhere. Well, he's doing his badge. He's done a couple of badges, I think. So I think he probably wants to be on a training ground somewhere, being able to offer on and off the pitch stuff. And I think there's another thing that you forget a little bit, where with the sort of with our perspective sitting in Liverpool, with all the fantastic players Liverpool have had, but also the culture which we come from. You know, there aren't a ton of African coaches and African managers knocking around out there, and you know, Kolo in this era where African football, you know, lads like Khan who came over to the UK, well, Kolo's one of them, but he's also possibly one of them who may be most able, who's got that backdrop of having had this career to go on. It might be worth him going and playing somewhere else, keeping his connections, keeping his legs going, but also the idea therefore that he maybe either returns to Africa or gets to be something in a slightly different sense. And I think
you feel like he's got a future in the game
massively somewhere, and I think that again you can brush that aside, because we're so used to watching lads come through in Liverpool or from wherever they're from. You know, we were speaking to John Barnes the week. You know, you're used to seeing a lot of that sort of stuff, but there isn't a great tradition of that, and I think it's important that he stays in the game. I think it really is more than almost any player we've had recently. You know, people say it's sad that Jamie Carragher's gone to do telly. It is sad that Jamie Carragher's gone to do telly on one hand, but on the other hand, he's really good at telly, so it ups the national discourse. Whereas for Kolo, even if Kolo was really good at telly, I think it is important that Kolo stays in the game for a variety of different reasons.
Absolutely. Elsewhere, away from Kolo today, the usual mad transfer tittle tattle which we all love. Well, Gutman does. Cameron Brannigan. This is a bit of a surprise one to me, and I said it in that voice in the office, but a bit louder when I saw it before. I like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's got some talent. He's shown that, particularly when he's playing with, you know, lads his own age not in the first team, in other words. But he's being linked with Barcelona and Real Madrid. A £5.5 million.
Who are you trying to kid?
Swoop.
£5.5 million swoop. Well, I think it's intriguing. I think there's I can't work him out still, and maybe we haven't seen enough of him. And I don't watch enough of the. I love listening to the Central League on Tour play because I don't watch enough of the under-21s and under-18s, to be honest with you. And I'm glad someone does. But you get the impression even these fellas who are watching him regularly can't quite work him out as to what sort of footballer he is. He's technically really strong, I think, and I think he can pass the ball forwards. I think he's got an eye for a lot of things around the pitch. I think he looks to dictate the game a little bit more than, in this era where we talk a lot about Liverpool players maybe being short of a certain thing. I think that certain thing he might have, but that throws the question of where it's come from. But the idea that he goes to Barcelona or Real Madrid does feel, huge. It does feel a bit. It feels unlikely in a sense.
I mean,
but he's a good player. But I wouldn't start him in any games next season. So it's one of them. If it's a very strange thing.
Manchester United as well have said to have had a sniff in the past, which is not. Yeah, I can see that because he's a monk, for one, which does make a difference. But it feels a bit mad that he'd end up going to Real Madrid or Barca. It feels a bit like, do you remember what was that lad called that's from Dale Jennings? Was it? And he ended up going to Bayern Munich, didn't get a sniff, came back again, and he's floating around somewhere in the lower leagues, and it didn't happen. I don't know where these mad shouts come from sometimes.
I think it does show that there is a thing, which is that if he's good enough to be linked with these clubs, if there's something in it, and there must be something in it to some degree, if there's something in it, then it does turn into where'd you get him on the pitch next season, because that's a really difficult question to answer, and that's where you begin to wonder about.
A lot of lads that applies to, isn't it?
This is, for instance, Kevin Stewart's a good example as well, and it might be that there's some hard decisions to make at the club in terms of you need to clear the paths, and there might be we might do some stuff that looks a bit like, well, I probably wouldn't have done that, but it might be because and you can go below Brannigan, for instance. When does Trent Alexander-Arnold get his first game for Liverpool? Played in a pre-season friendly last year, did nothing wrong, and is impressing. If we sign, as I hope we sign, it's easy for me. A lot of people say, I don't like Jordan Ibe or anything like that. If I'm absolutely honest, I'd just rather see Shea Ojo start games. I'd rather, there's 6 players. If you're going to play 4-2-3-1, I'd like it to be 6 players who are in the 3 start ahead of Ojo and Ibe. But if you've got 6 and then they're competing with one another, you almost need to put your eggs in one basket and say, well, there's going to be 10 games for either of you two, and we'd rather than split them 5 and 5, we're going to give this lad 10. I think things like that, and you can feel like the massive calls, but you've sort of got to make them at some point. And if Brannigan doesn't go, but he's highly rated, then maybe someone else has got to step out the way for him to come through and get chances.
Elsewhere then, Hugh Jenkins from Swansea, the chairman there, he's confirmed that they are interested in Joe Allen. No great surprise there. Apparently they had to go in January. Klopp said no, he didn't want to sell then, he wanted to see the season out. Now all the sort of talk now is basically it'll be left sort of till after the Euros. There'll be some kind of chat about how many games is he going to get at Liverpool. Swansea are going to be basically waiting in the wings and are prepared to take him. He's 26, Neil, and he's had 60 league games in 4 years. You can't blame the lad to be on.
They start on appearances.
I think they're just appearances.
So 60 appearances
in 4 years in the league.
You can't blame the lad if he wants regular football, and you can't blame Liverpool if they can't give it to him. Again, it's part of the conversation we were just having. There's only so many games to go around, and certainly because we're not in Europe, but also in general. There's Henderson, there's Chan, there's going to be Grujic, and we're going to buy one other, I presume. So we buy one other, and then suddenly there's four slots gone. And then you're looking underneath that, and you begin to, there's 1 or 2 names that Lucas can play in a couple of positions. We've just discussed Brannigan. There's other lads knocking around. So he might still occasionally look at Milner there, or if he had to, he could. And you just sort of get to the point where you think it would be difficult if I was Joe Allen for you to convince me I'm getting 25 games next season. I find that difficult. I find it difficult to be convinced of that. So again, it could be a best for him, best for us scenario. I understand people always say, whenever I say this, you've got to have a strong bench, and you've got to have backup players, and you look at the best teams they do, and I agree with that. But if you look at the best teams, you often tend to rotate these lads. He's now done 4 years of this. There's a point where he doesn't do 6. Have someone else come in and be the lad who does that for a couple of seasons, and then either breaks through or goes, and then you just got to keep them almost on a conveyor belt. What you don't want is, unless they've come through your youth system, and then it's a little bit different, but you don't want is lads just getting completely stale. And I think if you do look at the best clubs, players aren't allowed to get stale, they get moved on.
There's loads of this that feels quite almost emotional, I think, where you think it's a shame if he goes though. Same with Kolo, but unfortunately, like football's they've got to be ruthless, and I think Klopp is pretty ruthless, to be honest.
And the players themselves can look after themselves. I mean, Kolo probably could have, when he came to us, he probably could have got another deal at Man City on significantly reduced terms. But the footballers themselves have got to think,
wants the challenge.
What do I want? Wants the challenge more than anything else. What do I want next? And with Joe Allen, I think one of the reasons why, and as I say, I'm all over a strong bench. I'd love to have 23 terrific, effectively internationals, all good enough to start, and that's what I'd be looking to do next season with 1 or 2 gambles. But there's got to be the idea of the challenge. And if you're Joe Allen and you're thinking, here's another season where I get 15 games, it's not the same.
Anything happening? Yeah, there's one more thing, but I want to ask you about the Anfield app first.
Okay.
What's happening?
Today we've put out our Euros preview show, which we did with City Talk yesterday. That was really good. We're putting out, we've got AFQ later on, we've got a panel quiz that we're recording later on. There's something else, there's a City Talk show coming out today, free show for everybody, which we did with Rory Smith about his book Mister. Me and John Gibbons spoke to him. It's terrific, really. 3 parts of the show focus on that book, and it was a really interesting, just thought-provoking conversation. And the other thing that's in there as well is Paul Dehaney talking about Africa OEA. What do you want to talk to me about?
The other thing is, I'm annoyed, as I pointed out to you when I came in the office, that Alan Shearer is on national radio first thing this morning talking about yobs, just repeatedly using the word yobs follow England, this always happens with England, look at the yobs misbehave themselves. Alan, there's loads of people who've gone to the game, there's loads of people who are enjoying themselves having a drink. You weren't there, mate, when whatever happened in Marseille. Why are you on national media blanket term yobs for everyone who's gone over there? Don't like it, not into it. Why not speak to someone who was actually there, who saw what happened?
Well, it's lazy journalism for Radio 4 first and foremost.
Yeah, it's awful, but I mean, what's bad about it as well is people take it on board. They start referring to football fans generally, like our mate John Gibbons is over there, so is he a yob now? No, he isn't. He's just a lad who's gone to Marseille with his mates to watch the football. So let's stop using words like yobs. And if you're working in national journalism, stop talking to Alan Shearer about something he wasn't even there at. I mean, we spoke before that, there's a fella that we've dealt with over all the Heysel stuff that we did, Jeff Pearson. He's an expert in sort of football fan behaviour, police behaviour, how it's policed. He's over there, he's tweeting about it. He'd be a brilliant person to speak to. He
can't be that hard to find.
No, he's on Twitter. He's also, if you look at it, Jeff's Twitter, I had a look before after you said, he's saying the police were heavy-handed, they're throwing a load of tear gas in when it was a handful of people who were misbehaving. So where's the comments on the police behaviour? It's a very dangerous game, all this lumping football fans into one term like yobs.
I'm intrigued by, when we spoke to Jeff, one of the things when we spoke to Jeff about obviously Heysel and a wide variety of stuff. I remember how Jeff said that Marseille '98 was a tipping point.
Yeah.
Because what happened was normal people were caught up in it. What were deemed to be normal people. Unlike previous acts of issues around violence, there were people who were able to come back, who were able to say things like, I am a doctor, and what happened to me was, and as soon as that idea that there was a professional class that got caught up in the England's issues in Marseille around '98, and it changed the way in which people spoke about football, changed it for the better. It shouldn't have took that, but we all know it shouldn't have took that. It should have been completely different. But that's what it took. It took that idea that these people came back and they were deemed, they looked like Tony Blair. They came back and they looked like Tony Blair, and it was '98. It was post-Blair, and I'm just mildly concerned that we're now in a different era politically. We all know what's going on generally around austerity and the divisions that are being opened back up in the country, and now we've got someone on the radio referring to football supporters as yobs again, and we've got to be really careful about this. Really, really careful that those days of football supporters being spoken about in blanket terms, as Gareth saying, but also spoken about as though there is some sort of subclass, as though they're beneath the normal people. That they don't return in this current climate. It's exceptionally dangerous. So just refute and reject any of that as it comes through. Just out of hand. It's got to be done. It's got to be done at source. And if you see anyone doing it and you've got a bit of spare time on your hands, send a tweet, send an email, just say that's out of order. That's not the way in which you should be referring to a collective of people, because it doesn't take much for all the old ways and all the old issues to lapse back in. Football supporters can't be blanket referred to as anything, because they're hugely disparate sections of people from society, different religions, different races, different class, however you want to break them up, different income, no matter what you want to say, different places that they're from. it doesn't work. You know, for instance, John's a funny example because John and the people he've gone over with, they just applied for any tickets. They're English. They're in Marseille. They are therefore English football supporters, but they're not that bothered about England.
No,
so they're not.
They're just gone.
They're just gone. Okay, we'll wrap this one up. Thanks for listening to us. We'll see you next time.